There are people out there all across the country pushing boundaries to grow the game of golf. Like champion speed golfer Lauren Cupp, who plays faster than anyone else. And Will Lowry, whose work in the golf community inspires more kids to get into the game. As a champion partner of the Masters, Bank of America supports everyone determined to find out what's possible. In golf and in life. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Bank of America N.A. member FDIC, copyright 2025, Bank of America Corporation, all rights reserved.
You are listening to Women's Running Stories, where exceptional women runners share inspirational stories about their running experiences.
I remember the end of the event, and Francis Ramirez looks at me and goes, "Leadership looks good on you." And that is a direct quote from Francis. "Leadership looks good on you." I will never forget that because it was so empowering, and it made me realize that I could do this and that leadership should be something that I pursue in all aspects of my life. Hi, everyone. My name is Alia Qatarneh. I'm from East Boston, Massachusetts, and I am one of the LeadHers of TrailblazHers Run Co.
Yes, in this episode, you are going to hear the running story of Alia Qatarneh, which is deeply infused with community and leadership, especially through the Boston area-based TrailblazHers Run Co. Alia's story highlights why and how these three forces of running, community, and leadership led to her decision to run Boston's 26-point true marathon in 2024, and now again this year in 2025. And that is coming up this weekend, Saturday, April 19th. But before we hear more from Alia, I want to welcome you to Women's Running Stories. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I'm the host and producer of this podcast. Thank you for being here. I love Alia's story. I've been wanting to get her on the podcast for a long, long time. And I want to thank Liz Rock of the Trailblazers for her part in making this all come together, because I'm so happy to have Alia share her story on the podcast now. So let's get into it. Now, away from running, Alia has a very full life as a doctoral candidate at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, on her way to becoming a Doctor of Education Leadership. And she has a background in science and science education. Alia, of course, is also a runner, as well as being a LeadHer for the Trailblazers. TrailblazHers is an organization that fosters diversity and creates a welcoming environment for all women, especially women of color, and they are focused not only on running, but on holistic wellness. And their events are really fun. A little background on Trailblazers, because this does come into play in Alia's story. Trailblazers was co-founded by Liz Rock, Abeo Powder, and Francis Ramirez, who Alia has already mentioned. And the organization, it grew out of the Bra Run, which, like its name implies, is a running event that provides a welcoming, safe space for women to run in their running bras. Last year, over 500 women took to the streets of Boston for the 7th annual Bra Run. Also, Alia mentions the Pioneers Run Crew. Pioneers is the first running community in the Boston area founded and led by Black runners and runners of color, and they have an aim of making running equitable and accessible. Pioneers was founded by Sid Baptista, who Alia also mentions in her story, along with other Pioneers leadership, including Elise Lash. Pioneers and Sid are also the driving force behind the 26-point true marathon. This is an unsanctioned event that happens the Saturday before the Boston Marathon, and it runs through the city of Boston. This is a counterpoint to the Boston Marathon, which actually only goes through a small part of the city, just the last 5 miles of the race. There is a fair amount of crossover between the Pioneers and Trailblazers. They do work cooperatively, they support each other. And one example of this is the cheer zone they co-organize for the Boston Marathon. For many years, up through 2023, the cheer zone was located at mile 21, and it was well known for bringing big, big energy at a time when runners need it most. And that is on Heartbreak Hill. But during the 2023 Boston Marathon, the mile 21 cheer zone was surrounded on all sides by police because of the way that they were cheering. On that day, the supporters at mile 21 did resume cheering, but this act of excessive policing and what followed changed some important relationships in the local running community that have yet to really be resolved, let alone healed. And the Pioneers and Trailblazers have since moved their cheer zone to mile 22. Alia also mentions a couple other run clubs in the Boston area. One is Heartbreakers, the other one is Liberty AC, and just as a little side note here, Liberty was the first run club for women in the U.S., going all the way back to 1948. All right. Now, while these running groups and marathons and leadership and run community are all big factors in Alia's life today, it all developed over time. Alia's running journey started back in high school, and it was really a logistical choice. She'd been a soccer player, but then soccer practice was being held far from her home, so Alia was looking for what else she could do. And this is what led her to running. Now, here to tell her story, starting with the search for a more accessible sport back in high school, is Alia Qatarneh.
The thing that was accessible to me, quite honestly, because of location, I didn't have to travel beyond where my school was track. So in 10th grade, I started with outdoor track, and I was a sprinter. I always thought I was a sprinter. I'm still a sprinter at heart. In fact, if you ever watch me run, whether it's 100 meters or 26 miles, I run on my toes. Thank you, Coach Taylor, for that. But yeah, I started off running high school track. And looking back at it now, I see what I truly loved about it really wasn't the running. It was the community of young girls that we had together. I was an assistant captain by the time I was a senior. And what brought me joy was just recognizing the girls on the team, being together, being on those bus rides. And I always, I would say I loved track, but now, looking back, what I really loved was being a part of a team and building community. So that's how it started way back when. Went to Northeastern for college, ran with they had a run club, did that for maybe 2 years, and that was it. I didn't run beyond that, a 5K here and there. And it wasn't until 2013, I was with some friends post-college at a bar, and one of my friends said, "Hey, let's run the BAA half." This was right after the bombings. So being a Boston native, that really, that whole April and then some shook me. I was planning to be at the finish line. I think, the majority of the city, goes out, and I had to finish up an experiment in lab, honestly, and I was hungry. So I just went straight home. But I think a big part of that motivation to run the BA half was that it was the next, big race outside of their 10K, but it was their next big, race post the bombing. So I think that was a big factor. And so that's like the external context. Internally, running a half, really running Boston was always on my bucket list. Again, being a native, it was part of growing up. My dad would take my sister and I to the finish line in the 90s, early 2000s. So it was always something that I wanted to do. And I think the half marathon just presented itself as something that I could attempt to do. So so definitely the external environment, what was happening in the city, what was happening in our community or communities, And yeah, the just want to try something, a want to try and hopefully succeed at something that I didn't know anyone who had done a half marathon. So I would be the first in my family, believe it or not, to run a half, let alone a full marathon. So yeah, I think the challenge and the challenge was something that I was willing to take on at that time. I do remember hosting a spaghetti dinner the night before for three of my friends from Northeastern. Again, Trailblazers wasn't a thing. I wasn't running with Heartbreak or whoever was around at that time. It was just, me. But there were a few people from Northeastern who were running the half, and we had a pasta dinner at my house in Malden. And I just remember making some signs and some affirmations, things that are really core to me. And if you've ever come to a Trailblazers event, these are things that we do. We share positive affirmations, things like that. I made goodie bags for them. So I do distinctly remember the prep for other people. The goodie bags didn't have too much crazy stuff in there, but I remember giving them water, Gatorade or a Powerade, something like that. And for fuel, the only thing I tried was those honey stinger little gummy things, because my boss told me that she would have honey stingers, and I gave them honey stingers. And then for positive affirmations, I can't remember, but some of them were funny. I do remember there was one that was you run better than the government and things like that. But I had them printed out and posted on a wall in my living room. So when people came, again, there were only 3 invited guests. So 3 people were looking at these affirmations. But what actually came out of that, and I haven't thought about this in a long time, is that I would actually write positive affirmations or these funny affirmations on Post-it notes and have them with me when I would go to races. Now this is pre-Trailblazers, pre me being attached to any sort of run crew or run org. I would hand out these Post-its at the starting line. So look at that, spreading joy and building community before I was even the leader of TrailblazHers Run Co. Race day, I knew what I was going to wear, which is obviously the most important thing about a race, right? And I picked up this shirt from the Nike store in Newbury Street when I was in either high school or early college. And it's a gray shirt and it says, "I saw Boston in," and then there's a line. So my interpretation is, okay, you ran the Boston Marathon and you would write your Boston time in. So I wore that shirt and I wore these highlighter yellow shorts. I don't know, but I thought it was a fab outfit. And I was so incredibly nervous, so nervous. I remember I was so nervous that my period did not come when it was supposed to. And that's what happens when, the body is incredibly stressed. Things like that happen. And I was stressed out about my period to begin with, because I had never run long distances while on my period. And, but I was so stressed it didn't come. And I was like, yes, this is great. I don't have to worry about it. But then here's the fun part for everyone. As I start to run, my body began to relax. And towards the end of the race, I started my period. And, I had to throw those amazing highlighter yellow shorts away. But that is okay, because the point I'm trying to get across is that, my body, my mind, everything became relaxed as I was running, as I was doing the thing I said that I was going to do. I was actually doing it and doing it well. Yeah, and then I just remember not being able to walk upstairs/downstairs for a while. I was so incredibly sore. What I do remember, I have a very vivid recollection of crossing that finish line. Now, if you're familiar with the BAA half, historically it would end at White Stadium, 200 meters on the track. And as I mentioned, as a former sprinter, I was so freaking excited to end this long, very long race on a track because I knew what 200 meters meant to me. I knew what 200 meters looked to me. And so I'm just like, Shikari down, the lane, arms just like boom, 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 and across the finish line. And the first thing I said was, I'm never running a marathon. So 2013, first half marathon, 13 miles on the bank, shut it down. That was basically it for a little bit. But fast forward to 2019, actually, I actually started going to a local yoga studio in Cambridge, Mass, called Breathe. I was just looking for some dynamic movement, and I was also searching for community at that point. And I met a few wonderful women, Alana Morgan, Maria Martins, and Abeo Powder. And one thing about them, I gravitated towards them because I love their energy. And unbeknownst to me, these three women were connected through running, and they just so happened to go to Breathe. And in talking to them, I met other prominent people in the running community here. So I met Liz Rock. But basically in 2019, I became we had a small group of women called the Super Women. And, we were all runners. And this is how I was introduced to Pioneers Run Crew. And my first 5K with them was I think it was the Cambridge Classic. It was a winter one, the December one. And I just remember being around these women that I just met like 6-8 months earlier, pioneers. I remember meeting Sid Baptista. I remember seeing Elise Lash on someone's shoulders with the Pioneers flag. And it was amazing because at that point I had gone to a few races, again, by myself. I'd gone to a few races. You kind of know what race culture is like, that type of culture, that very Eurocentric, individualistic culture that comes with the sport of running. And here I'm seeing something that looks so much more familiar to me. I'm seeing dancing. I am seeing laughing. I am seeing hugs. I am seeing, honestly, a celebration. And I have some of my I have wonderful pictures throughout my running career and throughout my time with Trailblazers. But some of my favorite pictures are from December 2019 when that was my first introduction to these people that I call my family now. So December 2019, 5K with everyone, and it was a blast. And, quickly after that, the pandemic came, and that really shifted a lot. Obviously, the yoga studio was closed, so we were practicing yoga at home. And I did become fast friends, quick friends with Abeo. And, she brought me into the world of the bra run at that point, and because Trailblazers wasn't established yet, but Trailblazers became established in 2020, and it's been quite a few years, and I'm trying to remember, but essentially, 2020 came around. I became friends with an amazing group of women, and some of those women are the co-founders of TrailblazHers Run Co. So basically, once we were able to be together again, mid-2020, that's when I started to attend, and that's when Trailblazers was officially established. I started to attend some events with them.
Alia started attending events with Trailblazers, and she was asked to help with leading a few events in the early days. One of those was the time when Trailblazers co-founder Francis Ramirez told Alia that leadership looked good on her. And so when the Trailblazers was organizing their next tier of leadership beyond the co-founders, Alia was a clear fit. Developing as a leader is something she has spent a lot of time focusing on.
I could probably write a book, and I probably should write a book or something about this. It's an ongoing process. I'll start with that. Like I think I'm a great leader. I mean, there's a reason why I'm in a leadership doctoral program. I've used the Trailblazer space to try on a lot of what my program at the Ed School teaches us. A lot of, these frameworks and just ideals of what leaders should do and shouldn't do, and how to build teams and things like that. It's just been so, I feel so fortunate to have these experiences in parallel to one another because they inform each other so much. I don't want people to think that it's just, the ivory tower impacting and informing how I lead Trailblazers. It's quite honestly more so the other way around. Things that I've learned over the last few years, working with Liz, Abeo, Francis, Lindsay, and Melissa has informed how I did digest, readings and frameworks academically. And I will say that Trailblazers gave me the space to experiment with what leadership looks like for me. Our weekly run series is called Follow the LeadHer. And, at the beginning of being a LeadHer and leading these weekly runs, yes, of course I was in the front. Lindsay and I would be in the front. We knew the route. These are important things that leaders do have to do, at least at the beginning. But I will say Lindsay and I are rarely at the front now. It is so important to be able to lead from within, lead from the back. We've recognized, I'll just speak from an I statement, I've recognized the importance of making connection during these weekly runs. So, sometimes I'll even say, yeah, I'm gonna lead. I'll be in the front. And I end up being in the middle or the back because I just want to talk to everyone. I want to know people's names. I have this like internal running joke that by the end of a Trailblazers event, I should know everyone's mother's names. Like that's just how that would be a metric of success for me, is if I knew everyone's names plus their mother's names as well. You share something with me and I hope that I remember it, that I could recall that and bring it into our conversation to make connection moving forward. That is how I lead. I lead laterally, quite honestly. And so, yeah, I might be at the front. Yeah, I might be going through announcements. Yeah, I might be on, the website or featured on an Instagram page doing a funny TikTok dance or something. But those things aren't necessarily important to my leadership skill. Being able to look to my left and my right, to know my sisters' names, to make some sort of like personal and intentional connection with them, that's what allows me to lead. So I didn't know that at the beginning. Let's be honest. Like this is a learning process. And quite honestly, I didn't know that community building was a skill or is a skill. I was told by one of my oldest friends, Elena Milius, that it's my superpower. And so it's true. It was not something like I know I love building community because it makes me feel good, right? Building connections makes me feel so good. And so it was two things. I didn't know that it was a skill set. I guess three things. Didn't really know it was a skill set. Didn't know it was something that I truly like inherently had, and didn't realize that not everyone has it. So it truly is my superpower. I credit my success, whether that's like academic success or, my Trailblazers success, just like my personal success to to the superpower, being able to build connection. It's so incredibly important. So yeah, it's a big crux of who I am. And it's, I don't know, it's a currency that I value for sure.
Alia is an outstanding running community leader, in addition to being a leader in her career and academic life. And she is also a runner with some goals of her own.
I started a bucket list my junior year of college at Northeastern. And one item on the bucket list, was to run the Boston Marathon. And it's always been something that I've thought of. I wouldn't say dreamed of, but always something, in my head because, just because of my proximity, like local proximity to it. And, as we talked about earlier, there was no one in my family. I didn't have any neighbors who ran Boston. I knew no one who had run the marathon before, but I thought it was something that I should at least strive to do.
Alia had the Boston Marathon on her bucket list, and she'd had some recent experience supporting other runners during the marathon at the Mile 21 cheer zone.
Now that I was part of the Trailblazers and Pioneers communities, I was invited to Mile 21 to watch the Boston Marathon. And if listeners, if you have gone to an HBCU, or if the idea of homecoming resonates with you, like, that is what Mile 21 was. A homecoming, a place of celebration and joy and liberation, and quite honestly, dancing, dancing and food and bubbles and, confetti. And it was just an amazing place to be. So having been on the cheering side for quite a few years, it's a lot of work to support, for sure. And I had attended Mile 21 before I was part of leadership, so I would just show up and have a grand time. But I think one of the reasons that pushed me to put my hat in the ring was knowing that my brothers and sisters of Pioneers Run Crew and TrailblazHers Run Co would be at Mile 21. And yeah, and I think also, not having known anyone like personally outside of, my friends and Trailblazers and Pioneers who've run a marathon. Yeah, I didn't grow up seeing people run the streets of East Boston, getting their long runs in, getting their miles in. So to be able to be like, yeah, I'm from Eastie, and I'm going to be running the Boston Marathon, and I think that's pretty sick. I just felt like I had the entire neighborhood of East Boston on my back. And I was so proud and so ready to carry them 26 miles. And that includes my family, my parents, my sister, my grandmother, who's 90. Now she's 91 years old, but she had no idea why I was running the Boston Marathon. She didn't understand why I would do this, but so doing it for myself, yeah, sure. But really it was doing it for the people that I know and love, and for the communities that I call home. So that's what made me do it. And I'm so grateful that I did do it in 2023.
Yes, in April 2023, representing the Trailblazers, Alia ran not only her first Boston Marathon, but her first marathon ever. As she approached that start line, she was going into the unknown.
Lining up, we had a little bit of rain that day, and there were things that I didn't account for. I didn't account for, my socks being wet before I even started. So I was it was a little frantic at the beginning for me. And I think it took 3 to 5 miles for me to physically settle in to what I was doing, for my body to be like, okay, we're doing this, I guess. And I had been given some advice from, it was actually a woman who runs with Liberty, who, her name is Jennifer, and Jennifer has run numerous marathons. She's incredibly fast. I think she's run in Olympic trials before. I don't know, but to have someone who does focus on time and pace say to me, Alia, stop. And I want you to stop and take it in. I want you to, like, quite literally stop running when you see your people. And so, yeah, the intention was to finish. The intention was to see my family. The intention was to experience Mile 21. Honestly, that's really what I really wanted, to experience the thing that I had been a part of on the cheering side, on the opposite side. I wanted to experience what I typically give out. I wanted to receive that. So those were the main intentions. I did stop, and so there, I ran for my first marathon. I think I ran like a 4:11:30 or something like that. And so, yeah, there have been parts where I've like a little flicker of, oh man, if I didn't stop, maybe I would have run closer to 4 hours or under 4. But you know what? I'm never going to get that back. I'm never going to get that first Boston Marathon back, and being able to stop to see my aunt and uncle, my cousins, my parents, my sister, my partner. One of my professors from the ed school came out to see me. And I physically stopped, and it's raining. So that was, Jennifer, thank you so much for that advice, because I think many of us fail to really receive the moment and be in the moment. And I was able to do that to the best. I think I could have done it more, to be honest with you. But I did it to the best of my ability.
Yeah. Do you want to just describe what it was like to go through mile 21?
I honestly, I can't put it into words. There are pictures of me taken by actually someone not in our community, but I think his last name is, I think, DePasquale. I can't remember his first name, but he just so happened to be at mile 21. Probably he was drawn to the energy, I believe, is what he said. But you just see me crying. I'm just crying through mile 21. And even prior to 21, knowing where they were going to be, knowing what was going to happen, I'm crying. And even just thinking about it now, I'm getting a little emotional, because, not because of what happened at 21, but like what that meant for me at that time. Like going by my chosen family, being celebrated by my chosen family in a way that rarely other people get celebrated that way. It's just a magical moment. And I just remember being a cheerer and seeing people stop. People like at mile 21, random people that we do not know stop and take pictures or videos of us, stop and dance with us. And I couldn't understand, man, you have 5 miles left. Why are you stopping? I loved it. I soaked it up. Like I love seeing these people dance with us and like pull out their cameras and stuff, but I couldn't understand why they were doing it, right? But then to be on the other side and to experience it, I'm like, oh yeah, I understand. I get it, because we offer that little square footage that we take up offers something that you don't get anywhere else on the course, and it's invaluable, and it will quite literally carry you to the finish line. So yeah, it's I think very few people have experienced that, mainly because we can't clone ourselves and be at every single major. And I wish we could, because if you haven't run by the Trailblazers Pioneers Cheer Zone, which is now at mile 22, just look for us and soak it in. Like we do it for all of you, and it's a pleasure to do it. So yeah, it's an amazing feeling. You feel like you could do anything in the world going through that cheer zone. You feel like you could climb and the rest of Heartbreak Hill. You feel like you could finish the race. Like I can't, if we could bottle that feeling up, or not the feeling, if we could bottle what these two crews give to runners, it would be sold out in seconds for sure. But yeah, so it's I can't beyond that. I don't have any additional words. It's magical.
Alia did it. She ran the Boston Marathon, and she got to be on the receiving end of the unique support and enthusiasm at mile 21 that previously she had been giving. And she wanted more of that, which she knew she'd get running 26 Point True. For Alia, the choice to run 26 Point True was a no-brainer.
Yeah, that was always the plan. Because why run a marathon when I get to see my friends and family and that energy for like a hot second, when I could run a marathon and experience that for the entirety of 26 miles? That's really what it was. When we cheer the Boston Marathon, we're obviously concentrated to one specific area. And if you've ever run Boston, the beginning of the race, sometimes there are people out. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people out, but there are some dry spots, throughout the course. And 26 Point True is not like that. In fact, so there are some awesome pictures from last year's 26 Point True race. I'm at mile maybe 5 or 6. It was the Live Fit Army cheer zone. Beginning of the race, they created essentially like a tunnel. There were people on the left and people on the right, and it was the most insane energy I had ever, like, I wasn't anticipating that much energy that early on in the race, and I'm just, you see my veins popping out of my neck. I'm just screaming because it was just so amazing. So, I think for me, 26 True, I signed up for quite a few reasons. Obviously, because I wanted to run another marathon again. Could you believe it? I don't know why, but I did. after running Boston, I knew I wanted to run another one. I also wanted, I liked the structure that came with training. I know that might sound really bizarre for people, but I think as someone who does like planning and logistics and protocols and things like that, training for 20 weeks provides that. And I also wanted another chance to try to train differently. I wanted to give myself grace a little bit more than I did that first year. And I had a few posts about 26 Point True, and I think I put them in parts. It was like part 1, and there's a picture of me and Maria Martins. Maria Martins is like hugging me, and I just have this, like, my face, I'm just so solemn. I'm like somewhat emotionless. I didn't know how it was going to shake out in terms of, like, physically. I didn't know how I was going to perform. And the last thing you want to do is not finish a race or be in pain. And I had a interesting training cycle last year where I did have to go to PT. I had some knee issues, things that were flaring up from a previous injury. I was hit by a car back in October of 2020 and sustained a fracture in my tibia that went into my knee joint. And so, after running Boston, I did a lot of PT leading up to Boston just to make sure I was good. But the second that following year, training for 26 True, did more PT, experimented with some other treatments. And so I didn't know. So basically there's a picture of me just like, man, I don't know how this is going to go. I'm scared. Yeah, so that's how it started. And then there's a second picture of me that I'm looking at now where it just looks like I'm cruising, I'm in cruise control. Everything is okay. It's still not a celebratory face yet. So I'm getting there. And then you come to the pictures of me running through the Live Fit Army cheer zone, which again is at the beginning of the race, but there was just so much energy there that I couldn't deflect that energy. I had to soak that in and give it back. Hence the yelling, hence the just like veins popping out of my neck. Yeah, so I just like with any race or run, my body just needed to get used to what was about to happen, and once it did, it was wonderful. There was a part of the race where towards the end, right before the Liberty cheer zone, I can't remember what mile, but probably maybe 18, maybe close to 20 or so. And I was feeling hella good, physically, mentally, spiritually, towards the end of the race. Now, mind you, if you fast forward to like mile 24, I was running with Olguin, and I told Olguin, maybe it was even mile 25, I'm like, go, leave me. And just like any like dramatic movie, Olguin is like, no, I could never leave you. Like, I'm not going to let you go, and we were able to, we finished the race together. So there's a video of us crossing the finish line at the same time. So I felt good. I'm not going to lie. It was an amazing experience. And honestly, after that, like, I don't feel like running Boston again. I don't feel like running any of the majors really. because 26 Point True offers something that no other race can offer me.
The power of 26 Point True has carried right on through to this year for Alia, and she will be lining up once again on Saturday, April 19th. And after that,
I don't know what races I plan to run next. I do know that whatever I do, it will be in community with others. I know that.
Alia Qatarneh will continue to be in community with others, and the Boston area run scene is better for that. That does bring us to the end of Alia Qatarneh's running story on the podcast. I want to thank Alia so much for coming on Women's Running Stories and sharing her running experiences. Thank you so much, Alia, and have a terrific time at 26 Point True this weekend. Alia is not on social media, so I will not be linking to her Instagram account, but look to the show notes and I will link to how you can learn more about the Trailblazers, Pioneers, and 26 Point True. I will also link to the Women's Running Stories episode featuring Trailblazers co-founder Liz Rock. And that is going to do it for me. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I'm the host and producer of Women's Running Stories. Thank you so much for being here. I always appreciate you coming here and listening. And until next Tuesday, I do wish you healthy, joyful, cheer-filled strides forward. Women's running.
My name is Cindy Burnett, and each week I interview at least 2 traditionally published authors on my podcast, Thoughts from a Page. We talk spoiler-free about their books, so you can listen whether you have read the book or not. And then we delve into things that you most likely won't hear about anywhere else. The importance of the cover design, why they included various aspects of the story, personal details about both the books and the authors' lives, and so much more. You can find the podcast on every major platform and learn more about it on my website, thoughtsfromapage.com. Thanks so much for checking it out.
Women's Running Stories.